Zach, what do you know about bullshit?
Mostly just that I'm full of it.
Yeah, we've all got it coming out our ears nowadays, I think.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about bullshit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Bullshit. Bullshit.
Yeah.
I'm uh
It's
I'm so excited to talk about this.
yeah. This is important to me because as a person living in Hollywood, this is pretty
Mhm.
much the other language I speak. So
That's bullshit. You gotta
yeah.
gotta speak bullshit fluently to make it in the entertainment business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
I'm
right.
also very Los Angeles centric today. We should cut this out, but it's like the Sparks hat, the Dodgers mug, the Hollywood Bowl, real bullshit LA energy.
You're supporting local business, you know? Yeah.
Yes. The local business of the Los Angeles Dodgers needs all the help it can get.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So we're going to talk about bullshit today. So bullshit is a hardcore, hard-nosed philosophical topic that has gotten a lot of attention, and it's not just purely just something that people talk about. This is actually like a real legit philosophical topic. And like for listeners at home, we had recorded this episode already, and we had to go back and re-record it. And when we took a little bit of a break, this was the one episode that I was like, oh man, like we gotta get that episode in the can. That's like that we have to do this topic. It's so critical to understanding like news literacy and like understanding politics and so much about like the media landscape that we live in nowadays. We're just awash in bullshit. And
Yeah.
it's
And if
one
you're
of the most critical
wondering,
skills you can have. Yeah.
yeah, if you guys are wondering why we had to re-record it, it's because the first time Ryan brought up bullshit as a topic, I was like, "How dare you? How dare you read me so easily? I cannot believe he figured me out."
You put me
And
to the
then
core.
yeah, and then I had like a verbal version. Did you ever, the Telltale Heart, where he's like kind of staring
Mhm.
at the floorboards
Uh-huh.
and thinking to himself all of the terrible things? That's what I was doing, but I was saying it out loud. So that's why we had to re-record it.
We
I
both we
confessed
both
to
had we both had a little bit of a mental breakdown. I had to come back around to it several weeks later.
I confessed to a few crimes, most of which I did, a couple I didn't. I don't know
Right,
what
yeah.
happened to the Lindbergh baby. I really don't.
Which is which is important because if they had all been true, then it wouldn't have been
It
bullshit.
would have been bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So bullshit. So the very hard-nosed philosophical topic of bullshit goes originates with a professor of philosophy from Princeton named Harry Frankfurt, who in 1986 he wrote an essay called On Bullshit. You can find this online. It's an excellent read. It is a philosophy paper, so it's a little dense and verbose. But
Pretentious.
yeah, this is where the
It
origin
starts
of this
with
comes
I don't
from.
know if everyone's gonna get this, but actually,
Yeah, there's just like a whole page halfway through that's just like actually statements for the entire page. Yeah.
yeah.
You just gotta slog through that part to get to the good stuff. But yeah, in 1986, Harry Frankfurt publishes this essay called On Bullshit. And since then, if you go on Google Scholar and you look up the term bullshit on Google Scholar today, you will come up with 58,300 hits. That's how much academic interest there is in this subject. So it's a really well studied, very thoroughly worked on area of philosophy. And interestingly enough, out of that 58,300, 51,200 or 98% of them were published just since the year 2016 because something interesting was happening in the world of philosophical bullshit starting around that time. So the vast majority of the interest, it was already a pretty active area of philosophy, but the vast majority of the academic work that's happened really has just happened in the last 10 years or so. So we're in an exciting time for
I
academic
wonder what
bullshit.
happened about 10 years ago that made people so
Yeah,
fascinated by bullshit. I
so
wonder in
interesting.
culture if anything has changed in exactly 10 years ago.
It's probably just a coincidence that it happened. There's
Probably a
just like
coincidence.
couldn't possibly be that just like everybody all of a sudden just became utterly interested in like what is happening with all the bullshit in the world right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unrelated, so all of the research about narcissism has also increased in 10 years.
Right, right,
And
right.
and
Just
weirdly enough, micro penises. They've all gone right through the roof.
we've gone right through the roof. Yeah, it's like that, and like searches for frontal temporal dementia have gone up just in the
Yeah.
last like 18 months. Yeah, interesting.
Yep. Who would have
Yeah,
thought? Also,
so interesting.
stocks in adult diapers also way through the roof
Yeah,
right now.
totally. Yeah, they're having a real big year, a real big year.
Yeah.
hmm So bullshit. So what is bullshit? So bullshit is kind of defined in opposition to other terms. So bullshit is defined as a type of discourse that is distinct from both the truth and lying. So we know what the truth is. The truth is when somebody is saying something and they're trying to be as accurate or as faithful to reality as possible. Lying in this context is when somebody understands what the truth is. So they know what the truth is. They have respect for the truth. They have enough respect for the truth to recognize that the truth is still important as they try to subvert it, right? So a liar is somebody who is taking a statement that is specifically not true and purposefully trying to get somebody else to believe their untruth. But in doing so, they're still engaging with the truth. They're still interacting with the truth on a basic level and recognizing that the truth is important in some manner. A bullshitter does away with that. They don't care. A bullshitter is just going to say things that are completely separate from truth and reality. That has nothing to do with that. That is the difference between somebody who is a liar and who is a bullshitter. Is somebody who is a bullshitter may be saying something that is truthful, but their intent has nothing to do with being truthful. Their intent is entirely on how other people perceive them. So they'll tell bullshit to gain some sense of authority, to gain some sense of trust. They're still trying to pretend as if they're speaking the truth. They want people to believe that they're saying something that's truthful, but it's that whether or not anything that they're saying is truthful is completely separate from their actual intentions. All that they care about is the listener's perception of them. That's what a bullshitter is, right? So that's the definition of bullshit as it exists in this context. Got
Yeah.
it?
And that's pretty much every conversation I have in Hollywood. People
Yeah,
casually throwing out interactions that may or may not have happened with other people who are
right.
famous to
Yeah.
mildly successful.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Harry Frankfurt kind of finds two different drivers for this. So he finds a structural driver, kind of a what he calls a structural driver is kind of a societal driver, but it's basically just this idea that people are routinely expected to have and express opinions, oftentimes strong opinions about things that they have no business knowing anything about, right? Oftentimes you will find yourself in a situation where you will be interacting with other people socially and they expect you to have really strong opinions on like the interest rate in the economy or whether or not uh, organic produce is actually good for you or the environment or something like that, even if you have no background and expertise whatsoever in understanding any of that stuff, right? And people expect you to know about it and they expect you to have not only an opinion about it, but a well-formed and pretty strong opinion about that. So that's kind of the structural driver that Harry Frankfurt identifies as driving this is that people are expected to have opinions about things that they don't really have any expertise in whatsoever. Uh, the other one he calls a cultural driver, which is that in environments where sincerity or kind of like being true to yourself is more important than facts or accuracy, then bullshit will flourish, right? So any environment that you're in where people are saying that, like you have to be like true to yourself or like whether or not, this is kind of like the your truth is not my truth kind of stance that you hear a lot of people say. So on this topic, I'm gonna kind of both sides it a little bit on the political spectrum because I think that's something that you hear a lot from people on the left is this idea that like, oh well, your truth may not be my truth, and I think that that's kind of starting to go by the wayside. I don't hear that a lot now, like I did a couple of years ago, but it was not that long ago that you heard a lot of people saying that same thing as a way to basically kind of like I think kind of intellectually lazily just kind of pat off what other people's opinions were without really like engaging with it, right? It's like, well, you may think that, but like that's your truth and my truth is something that's different. And now you're
Yeah.
actually seeing, I think, a lot more of that coming from the right as they're like kind of adopting the left's bullshit
Yeah. Well, I mean,
in
it
that
is an
situation.
emotionally comforting
Yeah.
thought to be
Uh-huh.
like, we have two versions of reality, and
Right.
I just like, really, it's just a person not wanting to engage with a thing they don't
Hmm.
totally have an answer for. So
Yeah,
you just
right.
go like, well, agree to disagree, or I guess we disagree on this thing, and it's like, well, I
Yeah.
think humans need water to survive,
Yeah.
and you
Right.
think that there are interdimensional lizards who
Right.
drink fear juice out of children's blood.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And that's such a good example, right? So it's just like such a good example of like the structural driver, right? Is that like sometimes you interact with people and they expect you to have like a really strong opinion about whether or not people are lizard people. And you're just
yeah,
like, I don't actually have an opinion about this. But if you tell people that, sometimes the structural consequences can be kind of severe. I mean, in that situation, it's just like, oh, somebody's gonna be like, oh, you're telling me you don't believe in lizard people? But
yeah,
but people have the same opinions about a lot of different things, right? And
yeah.
and it's just like oh, like you're telling me that like you don't have any opinion whatsoever on like capital gains tax. Like what world do you live in? And it's just like, okay,
Yeah.
well, I
One
mean,
where it
there's
doesn't
things
affect
going
me,
on.
really. Yeah. There's a lot of problems in the world,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
we can't deal with all of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Best case
right.
scenario, you pick
Yeah.
one major problem and work on
Hmm.
that. That's
Yeah,
like
right.
what
Well, that's
a
a
lot of science is. Somebody just picked
for sure.
one problem and they're like, I'm just going to
Hmm.
work on that the rest of my life. And
Yeah,
I
definitely.
found there's a real correlation between how intelligent someone thinks they are,
Uh-huh.
by how many problems they think they can easily solve by just showing up and having feelings about it.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how we got
And
Doge.
yeah, and intense feelings, right? Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, and like the more intense you feel those feelings, like the more you're like doing something about it.
Yeah.
But in reality, are you? Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm fully on board with that. Yeah. So there's also two different types of bullshit that he identifies. So the first is soft bullshit, which is just kind of like offhand statements made with disregard to their truthfulness. This is kind of your garden variety bullshit. This is like what we're talking about here, right? Where it's just
Hmm.
like yeah, I mean, it's whatever. I have whatever opinion about that, and it's basically just like a thought terminating statement, and it's a it's not really about you actually expressing an opinion of any kind, but it's just a way of like engaging with somebody politely in a social setting, and it's just a thing that you say basically, right? So like that's soft bullshit. Then there's hard bullshit, which is similar, but it includes the intent to actively mislead the audience of your motives, right? So if you're saying it as a bullshitter, right, like you're actively trying to mislead anybody that's listening to you to like what your motives are and your competence, right? So like you're actively trying to put on airs that you're really smart, or that what you're talking about this particular subject, even though you don't. Like
Yeah.
you're just trying to get these people to believe that you know about it, right? And that's
Yeah. We
that's
call
hard
that,
bullshit.
in terms of
Yeah,
bullshit terms, you can call that the Joe Rogan, I think. I
yeah,
think
yeah,
that's a Joe
totally.
Rogan
Hmm.
thing.
Yep, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That is exactly what that is. Yeah, yeah. And the example that Harry Frankfurt gives in his essay is for these is political spin and marketing, right? So he specifically calls those out as like these are like the archetypes of bullshit, of hard bullshit.
Hmm.
Is that you hear politicians talk all the time about like, oh, like this is a good thing. Yeah, we lost the midterms, but like that's a good thing because it means that like we're getting stuff done in Congress. And it's like, no,
Hmm.
no, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
That's bullshit, and you know it, right? Or marketing. I mean, like, oh my God, think of like any ad that you've ever seen in your entire life, and how like whatever company is saying that their product is gonna make your life better and make you happier or wealthier or healthier or make your friends like you more or make your hair grow in fuller, right? Like
Hmm.
that's those that is the archetypical example of what hard bullshit is, right?
Yep.
So those are kind of like the two different types of bullshit that he identifies. There has been some work moving on after he kind of identified this as like a category of philosophical debate, and some people have moved forward and come up with different categories of it, or just kind of like dug down into the different aspects of it. And one of the things that is talked about by a philosopher named Thomas Shanto, who was drawing upon Jean Paul Sartre's work
Hmm.
on anti-Semitic rhetoric in post-World War II France, and he identifies something that he calls epistemically exploitative bullshit. which involves weaponizing social dynamics and discourse for bullshit in order to kind of like manipulate public discourse about things, right? So he's talking about specifically going like the reason that he was drawing upon anti-Semitic rhetoric is because he was identifying that you can take you can take a group of people who have a pretty hard-seated bias against Jewish people or against Black people or against poor people or who whatever minority group you want to put in there, and you can use bullshit to manipulate those people easier because they have that bias, right? And you're just kind of weaponizing their bias for your own personal gain, right? So that's the term that he came up with, epistemically exploitative bullshit.
Now,
Um,
this is John Paul Sartre said
yeah,
this,
yeah.
and did he name it specifically?
He
Like,
so Jean-Paul Sartre was talking about anti-Semitism
yeah,
in post-World War II France, and he
but
talked
he
about a lot
didn't.
of other things, right? Because he was
But
a
he
he was a
didn't
famous
give it like a
politician.
quick name to describe this phenomenon. Because I would have called him John Paul Schartz if it
Yeah,
was me.
yeah,
So people knew, like, I get
yeah,
it. Oh,
yeah.
it's
I get
that's a
it. It's
John Paul
the that's
Chart.
a
He's
John
pulling
Paul
a John.
shirt. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's he's made a little bit of a mess of his philosophical underoonies.
Yeah, and
That's a Jean Paul shirt.
I guess that's why I'm not as celebrated a philosopher as John Paul Chart.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
Yeah, that's why that's philosophers need to get a lot better at coming up with names for things. They gotta get on it. They're
mm-hmm.
missing out on some big opportunities.
They really
That's
are.
scientists and philosophers. We're not known for naming things well.
It's this is the thing.
Something that people
As
know about.
one of the things you can take away from bullshit artists
Uh-huh.
is the intense need to make this about you,
Yep.
and the intense need to like there's a reason I know who's doing all the bad stuff. It's because
Uh-huh.
they slap their name on it.
Right.
But like good people who like care are just like
Uh-huh.
we should make things better. Slap your name on it occasionally.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, that's a totally valid point. That's a totally valid point. Yeah. And it kind of gets to another aspect that people in this field have also identified, which is that bullshit is a privilege, right? So
Yeah.
this is something that oftentimes people that are engaging in bullshit are people that are part of a dominant group in society. Marginalized speakers are far less likely to be able to get away with bullshit, or they're less likely to be able to get away with the same amount of bullshit because marginalized speakers are much more likely to be challenged or called out by power structures. So the very ability to be able to bullshit is something that comes from a place of privilege, right? It's something that generally speaking, very specific groups of people engage in because they're the only ones that can get away with it because they're given the benefit of the doubt in a way that other groups are not.
Yep. That's
Mhm.
why Lizzo's career was destroyed after one controversy of her calling a lady fat. And
Right.
no one,
Yeah.
Mel Gibson could have done that for 25 years
Uh-huh.
in the 80s and 90s, and no one, he could have done
Yep.
it on the red carpet. He
Yep.
could have done it at the Academy Awards. No one would have
Yep.
cared.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. No, that's totally it. Yeah. And it was a one shot thing, and now all of a sudden, like she's down for the count.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's another aspect of it that's been identified, which they call the bullshit asymmetry principle, which is identifying that the energy required to make up bullshit is negligible. It's minuscule. But the energy required to refute bullshit is massive, right? And this reminds me of a concept in debate called the Gish Gallop.
Mm-hmm.
It's named after some guy who was kind of famous for this. He wasn't the first person to do it, but there was some guy who used to get into debates back in like I think the late 1800s, early 1900s, and he would get into public debates about things. And he was a bullshitter kind of before
Mm-hmm.
this topic was identified later on. And his thing is that he would just get up on a stage and he would debate these people and he would just roll off the tongue like just bullshit after bullshit after bullshit. And then the people that he was debating just basically couldn't keep up with him because he would have his time on the debate stage and in like a minute he would say like 10 falsehoods, and
Mm-hmm.
then the other person on the other side of the stage is expected to respond to that when like every single thing that they said is going to take like 10 to 15 minutes to respond to, and like you just spent a minute like throwing out 10 pieces of
Yeah.
bullshit that is like, oh Jesus Christ, it's going to take me 100 minutes to rebut your 1 minute of utter garbage, right? So it's that kind of thing, right? It takes almost no effort whatsoever to be a bullshitter, but to
Yeah.
refute a bullshitter, exhaustive.
Yeah,
exhausting.
that's
Yeah.
literally, there are so many dudes who are famous now for going to college campuses and
Yep.
just lying to kids,
Right.
and then them being like, either not have all the facts available to them to like refute the specific lie you said
Right.
about how 80% of X is, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
80
Totally.
99% of dogs are boys and 99% of cats are girls.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what Charlie Kirk did. That's how Charlie Kirk really like raised his profile more than anything else. Is like he would go to like community colleges and he would try to like debate people that didn't really know much about anything. Meanwhile, he's like debating full time. Like that's literally his
100%.
full time job,
And
and
you're going
he's
to
just going and
people.
like talking to people.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you're going people, and you have all the topics, and they have
Right.
none of the topics, and you're
Right.
saying incendiary things, and they
Hmm.
have no, like,
Yeah.
yeah, I could refute it. Give me, what are we talking
Yeah.
about? And I'll take a
Yeah.
second to look up what we're saying here.
Right. Right. Right.
But he
Yeah.
didn't do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I'm gonna stand here and I'm gonna set all the rules for the debate. I'm gonna host the debate stage myself, and then I'm going to pick all the topics, and I'm just gonna say stuff, and you have to come up with everything off the cuff, right? There was a I mean he's dead now famously, so like it's a little bit beating a dead horse. But there was a video of him trying to do the same thing. He went to like Harvard, I
Mm-hmm.
think he went to like Harvard or Princeton. He went to some like Ivy League institution and like tried to do the same thing and try to
Mm-hmm.
talk about politics with like a bunch of like like Ivy League poli sci majors and just got absolutely wrecked.
Yeah.
Like once he was actually talking to people that once he was trying to like debate people that actually like knew what they were talking about.
Yep.
Uh,
And he went immediately back to the circuit of people who were not prepared to talk to this
yep,
guy.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, it's very telling. Yep. So So there's that, right? So bullshit asymmetry principle, bullshitting is a privilege, right? There's some interesting psychology work that's been done on bullshit as well. So Gordon Pennycook's group, they have a whole work on the reception and detection of pseudo profound bullshit, right? So this actually won an Ig Nobel Prize in 2016, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And they came up with this idea of the bullshit receptivity scale. So what they did was that they took randomly combined abstract buzzwords that were derived from Deepak Chopra's social media and a new age bullshit generator online, and they
Mm-hmm.
kind of took words and concepts and buzzwords and individual like snippets from those things and created their own internal new age bullshit generator. And they created these syntactically coherent but semantically empty nonsense statements, right? So they created
Mm-hmm.
bullshit statements, right? Like a short little
Yeah.
snippet that has no real meaning to it, but kind of sounds as if it might be profound, right? So like an example of it is wholeness quiets infinite phenomena, right? Is one of the ones that I wrote down.
Yeah.
And
That's
there's
right.
there's
Did you
there's a whole bunch of good ones online.
I
Yeah.
was gonna say, if you want a nice current example of this as well, there's a video of Matthew McConaughey talking about America's 250th anniversary,
Okay.
and it's like 3 minutes of him just saying not a goddamn thing of substance. He is just like, and we're people, and we exist, we coexist, and life is pushing through us, but we got to push
Uh,
through life. And who
yeah.
we are is we're a combination of things, and we're growing, but we're changing, and we're changing, but we're staying the same. And you're just like, bro, are you free associating? Like, I get you're gearing up for
Probably.
politics at some point, but
Yeah.
like, don't,
Yeah.
please.
Please don't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're good.
Yeah, we have enough unqualified famous people in politics right now. Like it would be nice if we had people that were actually like qualified to do the job. That would be
Mm-hmm.
great. That would be
Wait,
absolutely
okay.
great.
What is this semantics thing? What is the
So
website?
so it's a so it's there's a new age bullshit generator online that is kind of amazing that like this whole thing is made out of, and the guy that wrote it, he uh he did it, I think, basically just for funsies. But
Mm-hmm.
it's it's pure gold.
Let me see. Okay, I think I found it. You know, by refining, we grow. And
Yeah.
honestly, the thing about bullshit in this capacity is it really is what can I emotionally bring to this? So,
Yeah.
like, you give a vague enough statement, and as a human being, you know, it's that thing of like where human beings bring meaning
Hmm.
and and relate, like we bring meaning to things, or we see
Yep.
faces and stuff that doesn't have a
Yep.
face in it, because that's just how our brains are wired. Because I
Absolutely.
read that and I'm like, yeah, actually, if I refine some things, I probably will grow as a person.
Yeah. Right.
Interesting.
Uh-huh. There's there's a lot of wisdom here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, we must
What
learn
else?
how to lead spatial lives in the face of suffering, which
Sure.
I will interpret as, if I see something bad happening on the bus, I will
Hmm.
manspread to
Yeah.
make sure that I'm taking up as much space in that situation as possible.
Right. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's some amazing ones. Do another one.
Okay, let's see another one. We exist as molecular structures. Well being requires exploration.
That is there's some like kind of true statements there, I guess,
It's it's not wrong. That's the
right.
point.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
it's that
Yeah,
it,
exactly.
it's that thing with AI that drives me nuts, where like people
Hmm.
are like, I love it, it's like my dream romantic partner, and it's like, yeah, because it
Right.
doesn't say no. It
Yeah.
doesn't have needs. Real
Yeah.
people have needs
Or
too.
or wants or desires or opinions. Yeah. Nope.
Every now and then you'll want to go out to dinner with your partner, and
Yeah.
you want Italian and they want Mexican. And
Right.
that's what the reality of a relationship is that that's a human being who brings on, and that's the
Yeah,
most basic surface level need of a relationship in the world. But like,
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a really good point. It's a really good point. I'm actually gonna that's a super good segue. So I'm gonna finish up this idea really quick, and then we're actually
Hmm.
gonna jump ahead to LLMs because we're gonna talk about AI. That's an important part about this. Yeah. But anyway, so with the pseudo, we'll just finish up this thought really quick. So with the pseudo profound bullshit receptivity scale, what they did was that they took these statements and then they read them out to people, and then they asked those people to state whether or not they thought that the statement was profound or how profound the statement was, right? And really, the correct answer is that they're not profound at all because it's all made up garbage and bullshit.
Hmm.
But they found that they also did a whole panel of like personality tests to go along with this as well, so they could kind of see like how do these people think about things and how do they go about interacting with like media and stuff in their day-to-day lives. And they found that people that scored higher on analytical thinking skills, so the ability to like take in a piece of information and just kind of like think through it critically, they found that those people were much better at recognizing pseudo profound bullshit, much better,
Hmm.
which makes sense because you're spending a little bit more time thinking about things instead of just kind of going with a gut reaction. They also found that people that scored high on the bullshit receptivity scale, higher bullshit receptivity correlates with stronger supernatural beliefs. They also had a reduced ability to recognize fake news headlines as fake, right? And so there's a
Hmm.
whole list of personality traits that go along with being receptive to bullshit, right? Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about AI because you mentioned it, and
Yeah.
like that's definitely a big part of it, and that's a big part of what's happening recently in the field. Kind of the one of the biggest updates in the field of philosophical bullshit research is looking at these LLM chatbots and trying to figure out like does this count as bullshit, right?
Hmm.
And one of the things that you will find if you look into this literature is that none of the debate uh, is about whether or not it's harmful, right? None of the debate is about whether or not these bots being bullshit, whether it's bullshit or not. Everybody in the field kind of recognizes that like these things are kind of harmful in their usage and in their use case in the environment. But it really gets down to like a technical definition of like does this actually count as bullshit or not? Does it fit the definition? And the debate comes down to basically two different sides talking about the intent, and they're basically saying these things as they're created, they have no human intent, they have no desire, they're trained on engagement, right? They're designed to increase your engagement and to keep you engaged with them for as long as possible and to continue your chat for as long as possible and use up more of them tokens. But it's not there's no truthfulness at all at any point in the entire matter, right? They don't
Yeah.
care. There is no bullshit. There is no truth. It's all bullshit, right? In that regard. But some of the people debating it say that it doesn't technically count as bullshit because there is no intent,
Yeah.
and that's really where the debate lies, right?
I disagree with that second one, because
Yeah.
ChatGPT is like a mini robotic Sam Altman if he had
Uh-huh.
access to information, which
Yeah.
is,
Uh-huh.
if you ever know anything about Sam Altman, which I don't recommend learning too much about him, but
I
he
know.
is a complete bullshit artist. He
Yep.
notoriously just tells people whatever he thinks they want to hear in that moment.
Yep.
And I think he created a device, or he helped
Yeah.
foster a device
Hmm.
that does what he does.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like kind of useful, but it's mostly just telling you what it thinks you want to hear.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
mostly, and you can get people to do a lot of stuff by
Mhm.
just telling them what you think they want to hear.
For sure. Yeah. $1 trillion valuations and getting like every single Fortune 500 CEO over the last couple of years to be 100% on board with this technology. Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
you're pretty close to the way that that debate goes actually in the literature too, is that there's some people who are actually saying in this debate sphere that even if human intention actually does care, they're basically saying that like the human intention of the people that created the systems are basically leaking into the LLM, and that their human intention to deceive the user base is enough to satisfy it as being bullshit, even if even if human intentionality is actually like a critical aspect of this definition or not. Like that is a legit part of the actual
That's what
academic
I'm
debate.
saying.
Yeah.
If ChatGPT, if large language
Uh-huh.
models had the option to be like, hey, I don't totally know what you mean, or
Right.
like, hey, I actually don't have any evidence for X,
Uh-huh.
I would be like, yeah. But
Yeah.
like they cite sources that don't exist. They just
Yeah.
make shit up,
They
and
make
that's
shit
an
up.
op that's not like that's not a flaw with with the system. That's
Yeah.
by design.
Hmm.
They could edit that out. That could be
Yeah.
removed. They have so many people working on large language
Yeah.
models. You could pull out the part where it just makes stuff up, but you
Yeah.
chose not to, and
You
that's why
chose
it's
not to.
bullshit. You
Yeah,
had
exactly.
every reason to choose in your mind because
Hmm.
it gets people more engaged if it feels like it has every answer to every question you could possibly ask it.
Yep.
It
Yeah.
chooses not to. The
Yep.
reason they keep doing updates on this thing and having to
Hmm.
tweak stuff out is because
Hmm.
they notice organic problems. You knew
Right.
that problem from day one and you've never tried to get rid of it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It just became a problem now. Yeah. No. And it goes even deeper than that, because my understanding of it is that a lot of these systems actually do have some ability to be able to say that like I don't know the answer to your question, but these companies have tweaked it to basically say like don't admit that you don't know. Because
Yeah.
when you do that, then that lowers engagement with the users. That makes the user go like, "Oh, okay, they don't know, so I'm just going to go Google it instead." Or I'm
Yep.
gonna I'm gonna leave this system and I'm gonna go try to find a credible source of information instead. And that's
Yeah.
what they don't want. They don't want that. Yeah. So some of these systems do actually have like some ability to, and like it's they're not reasoning in any like human sense, right? So like it's not really useful to describe it as like, oh, like they don't really know anything, but there is some subset of output of these systems that will go down a line of them putting the strings of words together saying I don't know.
Yeah.
And the companies have found that like, oh, when you do that, users don't like that and they disconnect and they disengage. So don't say that. Don't say you don't know. It's better to make something up, and then they call it a hallucination. Yeah.
Yep. There
Yep.
was a chatbot. I don't remember the specifics on this,
Hmm.
but I learned about this not terribly long ago. It was a
Yeah.
chatbot that was created, I want to say in like the 70s or 80s, and
Hmm.
it was designed very similar to ChatGPT in that it just was supposed to be like a conversation tool,
Hmm.
but it just told you stuff you wanted to hear.
Yep.
And the
Yeah.
scientist who created it was like, I was
Hmm.
amazed how quickly people fell in love with this thing.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was amazed how quickly people would just be like, hey, can I have some privacy to talk to this guy? And
Hmm.
it's like,
Yep.
it's not a real person,
Yeah.
but we
Yeah.
just want to hear,
Hmm.
we just want some affirmations.
Yeah. 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 I just
Yeah.
want this machine to tell me that I'm smart and pretty for like forever.
I
Yeah.
think about that moment. I think it's an underrated moment from the show Community. It was in the last
Uh-huh.
season, and there was a character played by Keith David, and
Mhm.
he was talking about how when he used to work in tech, he got addicted to complimenting white people. He's like, white people are so hard on themselves. They just want to be told what they're doing is good and keep on doing what you're doing. And then he gets like back into it, and he's just walking around, and somebody's like serving themselves food, and he's like, now that's a man who knows how to eat meatballs. And like, that's ChatGPT to me.
I
It's just a
love it.
guy being like, now this is a guy who knows how to wear pants.
Yeah, no, I mean you're not wrong. Yeah. So I mean like yeah, they're not trained at any point on truthfulness. And in fact, they've had a all of these companies have had a really, really hard time. They've tried to make them more truthful and to be better at like telling the truth and to be better at understanding the truth. And it's been very difficult for them to do that, and it's because it's baked into the very core of them that truthfulness is just kind of like lacking and completely left out. And not only that, but there were some pretty damning papers that were published by I think Google just this last year, where they were saying that based on the LLM architecture, right, the large language model architecture, which is a type of AI system, right? People kind of assume that LLMs are synonymous with artificial intelligence now, but really that's just a branch of artificial intelligence, and that's what most of these chatbots are based on nowadays, is that the LLM architecture at its core is always going to be untruthful. It's always going to hallucinate. It's you never you could spend unlimited funds and energy and effort on getting out every single teeny tiny little uh wrong statement and hallucination, and you will literally never, it's been proven mathematically, you cannot make them be 100% accurate. You just can't. It's built into the structure of it. You can literally never get away from it. And we've kind of, what I think is that we've basically reached a plateau on like how good they can make these systems in that regard. And now they're basically, as far as I can tell, just not even working on that anymore, because they're just like, oh well, it's a waste of our money. Now we just focus on engagement, right? Because they're not programmed to be honest and truthful, or really even to give good quality information. They're based on verisimilitude. They're based on looking like a human, right? These are bots that are designed to pass the Turing test. Do you know what the Turing test is? Have you heard
Yeah,
of this term?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
but I think we should explain it.
Yeah. So Alan Turing was a mathematician and kind of the father of everything that turned into AI. But he was a computational scientist and a mathematician back during World War II, and was an amazing scientist. He was the scientist he was a mathematician in the UK that broke the Enigma code that the Nazis were using to send messages back and forth to each other using a secret code. And he built this computer in the UK, very hush hush and very secret at the time, that cracked the that was he built a computer that was able to crack the Enigma code, and probably brought the entire war of World War II to a halt. Some people have estimated like 6 months to a year earlier, which is a huge contribution for like one. It wasn't just him; it was a small team of people, but for like a small team of like 4 or 5 people, to have that big of an impact on World War II. I mean, they probably had as big of a single impact on World War II as any major world leader did during the actual war. So that's kind of like what he was most famous for during a lot of his life, although a lot of that stuff was kept secret until the very end of his life or even after his life. Um, but he also came up with a lot of like core concepts of how we think about artificial intelligence way back before computers were ever capable of actually doing it. But he kind of did a lot of like really early philosophical work about artificial intelligence. And one of the things that he came up with was this idea of the Turing test, which he himself never claimed to be a test of consciousness. But the statement that he made was that if you were to make a computer, right? So the setup of it is that you have a human being sitting down at a computer terminal, and then they're having a conversation through this computer terminal to some other entity, and that they could either be talking to a human or they could be talking to a computer. And they don't know, it's all text based, and they're just kind of like entering commands into a computer terminal, and then they're getting output out of it. And he was saying that a system could be considered to be artificially intelligent when you as a human user could no longer tell the difference between a human on the other end and a computer on the other end. And that's the Turing test idea that he came up with. He is not the one that said that this is a test for consciousness. A lot of other people took that idea and ran with it and said that like, oh, this is a test for consciousness. Alan Turing's Turing test is a test for consciousness,
I
right?
would also like to argue, I think there's a not insignificant chance that Alan
Uh-huh.
Turing did this to dates at sometimes. Like he started the date and he's just like,
Uh-huh.
if you were in a hallway and you
Yeah.
saw a door, would you walk down the hallway? I don't know what's on
Right.
the Turing
Yeah,
test.
yeah.
As you can tell, I don't know what's on
Yes.
the Turing test. Um,
Yeah. Have you ever seen oh my God,
Blade
what
Runner?
is Blade Runner? Yeah, Blade
Yeah.
Runner. Yeah. So in Blade Runner, when they're talking to the replicants and they're interviewing them and they're like trying that is a Turing test that they're giving, right? It's like
Yeah.
kind of slightly more advanced one than what he's talking about. But like that's in Blade Runner, they're trained to like tell the difference between like a human being and a replicant by using like a Turing test essentially,
Yeah,
because they can look at their answers and like systematically be able to figure things out, right? So like
which
yeah,
is
so that
which is funny because now that
okay,
we live in the era of like chatbots and stuff like that,
yeah,
I don't think we can devise that test anymore. I don't think that
no,
test can exist
yeah,
because also a lot of people just wouldn't, like, they just can't tell the difference anyways. Like, it
no,
doesn't matter what answers you
yeah.
give.
Yeah, and you hear a lot of people have been saying there's since these LLMs have kind of risen to prominence, there's been a lot of people that have been using the Turing test as like like that's a test for consciousness, which is like that's just flat out false. And that has been considered to not be an accurate idea that it's a test for consciousness in in neuroscience and in philosophy for decades at this point. That's not a new thing. That's not something that like, oh, we realized with LLMs that that's not a valid test of consciousness anymore. I mean, it's been like decades that any like serious philosophers or scientists working in this field felt that that was actually like a useful definition for consciousness. But also there have been chatbots going all the way back to the 90s that were able to do this. And like you talked about the one, I think that was the IBM system that was able to do that, right? And I had heard about that too. And yeah, the trick of just being like complementary to somebody is like a well-known one in this space for a long time. But yeah, I mean there were Turing test competitions going all the way back to the 90s where people would build these chatbots and then users would go in and they would just like have a conversation with them. And if they could tell if it was a bot, then it wouldn't pass it. But going all the way back to like the late 90s or early 2000s, there were chatbots that passed the Turing test, right? And the goalpost just kept on getting moved as like oh well now we need a more rigorous Turing test. And like we need to like change the rules of it so that it like is modified ever so slightly, but like there have been chatbots for over 20 years at this point that could pass the Turing test, and the LLMs I think just kind of like put it to rest that like that's not a valid test for consciousness. I mean it can do plenty of other things, right? There are a lot of useful things that you can get out of an LLM system, but it's not evidence for consciousness. But you still hear some big names saying that these systems, I think they're conscious. And there was somebody like a Nobel Prize winning scientist who just posted on their like personal blog like a couple of weeks ago that they think that like the new version of Claude is conscious because he basically like had a conversation with it and it
Oh,
complimented him and
it's
he
the
was
it's
like, oh shit.
the famous atheist
Uh,
dude,
oh yeah, Richard Dawkins. Yeah, Richard
Richard
Dawkins.
Dawkins. Yes.
Richard Dawkins. You are correct. I read his post and I was infuriated by it. But
Yeah.
that's fine.
That's one of
That
those
is
one that falls under
uh,
the, oh man, that's a bummer. That,
yeah,
like, what, and maybe this is
yeah.
my own conceitedness, but like
Uh-huh.
the existential fears that I'll get to an age, and I'll
Yeah.
be like, yeah, this robot's a real person and he loves
Uh-huh.
me. Like,
Yeah,
I won't
yeah.
get it anymore.
Uh-huh.
Like,
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
bet 20-year-old Richard Dawkins would make fun of 70-year-old Richard Dawkins. You know what I
Maybe.
mean?
Yeah, for this particular lapse. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and he's like I mean he's not like it is what it is. Like he's made some he's made some progress in his own field in his time, but he was also a very close associate of Jeffrey Epstein, and he loved
Yeah.
going and hanging out with him. So like it's been a while since I had much respect for him at all. But like this is just that was really it was frustratingly naive his essay or his post that he wrote about it because it
Yeah.
basically was his argument essentially was that like oh this thing is like really nice to me. So like I think
Yeah.
it's I've been convinced now that it is fully conscious. I think that this
If
thing is conscious.
if you're friendly enough to Richard Dawkins, he's on your side. It's
Yeah,
weird.
yeah.
I mean, to be fair, it seems like Claude did essentially the same amount of work that Jeffrey Epstein did to win him over.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's right. Yeah.
Claude did invite him to an island, for the record. If you
Uh,
guys see the chat
yeah.
logs, he was like, "Hey, why don't you come to my island? There's a lot of cool people there."
Right. Yeah. He was like, I love going to islands. I used to go to one all the time.
Oh, I'm a
Yeah.
big island guy.
Yeah. So that's our conversation on botshit, which I forgot to mention that that's the term that they're using for this now. Like is are these LLM systems, are they bullshit? Are they not bullshit? Does it count? Does it technically count? And either way, it's botshit.
Yep.
And it's useful to treat them as if it is bullshit because their effect on the world and on society is the same. So like, why worry too much about whether or not it fits this narrow definition of whether or not it's bullshit? Because its effect is the same. So So that's that. I think we can move on to talking about bullshit in the public sphere. So the main area of bullshit that we really come across, as I already said, is kind of marketing and also politics, right? So it's very common in politics, and this is something that you see a lot. And this subject has been studied quite a bit, actually looking at Russian state-owned media and the type of public discourse that the Russian government engages in their state-run government news organizations, and something that they call a fire hose of falsehood, right? So one of the things that has been documented coming out of state-run news agencies in Russia is that there is just kind of like this is essentially a gish gallop, but coming from the government of just different fake stories. And every time that you see a news story and if it's coming from them, then it may or may not be true, but like it doesn't matter, right? The truth of the news article or the news coverage that any particular news story is getting is completely inconsequential. What is important is whether or not it is propping up the government, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's propaganda to its core, right? And Russian state-owned media is a very archetypical example of state-run propaganda, right? But they have this idea of just kind of a fire hood of falsehoods, which is that they put out so much false statements that even if you understand that some of this is fake, that some of this is false, you're getting flooded with so much of it that you have a hard time discerning what's true and what's not true.
Mm-hmm.
No, just
Was that a dog?
no. I had a baffle that's coming up my covering up my skylight because the background is too bright and it
Mm-hmm.
just fell down because I had it taped up apparently not well enough. But yeah,
I mean, to be fair, be a little careful. That could be Russia related. They don't do
that,
well with people saying
the
critical
timing of it.
things.
Right. Yeah, the timing of it, and it's I'm here in Washington, so I'm a lot closer to Russia than I've ever been before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but this has actually been taken up locally too, in domestically. This idea of a fire hood of falsehoods has been taken up domestically in the Trump administration, right? So Steve Bannon, who has been an architect of the of everything about the way that Donald Trump comports himself as a politician, and was his campaign manager during the 2016 election and was like very influential in forming Donald Trump into the kind of politician that he is. And he came up with the idea of flooding the zone with shit, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
literally how Steve Bannon himself describes it. And it's exactly the same idea as this Russian fire hose of falsehoods. It's just that that's explicitly what he is proposing that you could do as American politician is that you could just flood the zone with shit and just put out so many different news stories out there that are all negative and they all suck and they all piss everybody off. And you just do it at such a rapid clip that your political rivals can't keep up with it. And they spend all of their time chasing everything down because, like we talked about, there is an asymmetry in bullshit where if you're spewing out so much shit that your adversaries can't keep up with it, then that puts you at an advantage over them, right? So
Yeah, and
that's the whole idea.
and if you're wondering how this affects your normal life, every single one of us can probably think of like 10 horrible things that happened in the last like 2 weeks that we
Hmm.
forgot
Right.
because another horrible thing happened that
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
immediate. I It's like you lose your object permanence. You feel like a
Right.
baby. You're just
Yeah.
like, oh right, there 2 days ago a bunch of white
Right.
supremacists went to DC to do a
Hmm.
white supremacist rally. I
Right.
forgot about that.
Uh-huh.
Also, if you guys aren't familiar with Steve Bannon, close personal friend with Jeffrey Epstein.
Yep. Close personal
Yep.
friend with Jeffrey Epstein. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
That's how they got introduced to each other. Yeah. Yeah. That was it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's purposely part of the idea, right? I mean, it's literally just flooding the zone with shit. That's Steve Bannon in his own words. Like he is basically admitting that this is all bullshit and it doesn't
Yep.
matter, right? And also, where are the Epstein files? Oh, I don't know. We just invaded another country. We have to spend the next couple of weeks talking about whether or not the Lincoln reflecting pool is more important, right? That's what we have to do, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know that we need any more. I think that's pretty clear. I mean, that's just I think a lot of people are pretty clear on what like bullshit in politics looks like nowadays. It's worth it to point it out, but like that feels pretty good to me. But there are other areas that you probably come across bullshit in your daily life as well, and one of them is pseudoscience, right? So if you come across a story online that is purporting to be scientific in nature, oftentimes it is purporting to be scientific and it has all the trappings of science and it's trying to convince you that it is real science. But when you look under the cover, it's actually just more bullshit. And that bullshit, in a scientific sense, is pseudoscience. That's what pseudoscience is. Pseudoscience is scientific bullshit, right? And there's a whole
Yeah.
bunch of it out there, right? This is something that we come across a lot, especially if you're looking in industry groups and like the wellness culture industry
Mm-hmm.
and dietary supplements, right? You see a lot of this with vaccines and vaccine hesitancy, right? I mean, a lot of that's coming out again out of the Trump administration, but RFK Jr. has been talking about he's been spewing vaccine bullshit for decades at this point, right? This is not a new thing, right? And there is the reason that they're going after vaccines is specifically because vaccines are so safe and so well tested and so effective that if they can get you to start being doubtful about vaccines, then they can get you to be doubtful about anything. And like, why
Mm-hmm.
even go to the doctor when you can just go to this guru down the street who
Yeah.
will tell you that he has 100% certainty and has all the answers and knows exactly how to cure your cancer. Don't give your money to that health insurance company or to that or to that hospital or that doctor. Come give me all your money, right?
Yep.
And don't worry about it, right? That they're not engaging in the truth. I'm engaging in the truth. Come believe me, right?
I think an
Uh,
easy way to spot medical bullshit is,
uh-huh.
does this product do everything?
Right. Yeah.
Because bullshit does
Mhm.
everything.
Yep.
Like when a
Bullshit does
new
everything.
bullshit product comes out, it's going to
Uh-huh.
help you with cancer. It's going
Hmm.
to help you with dementia. It's going to
Yep.
help you with athlete's foot.
Yeah.
It's going to make
Hmm.
your erection stronger. Your hair is going to grow back thicker. Your skin's going to get 20 years younger.
Hmm.
And then you're going to be sitting on a mountain of unregulated supplements
Yep.
and aloe drink that just
Yep. Yep. Yep.
doesn't do anything.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. What was that like
Oh,
horse medicine that
ivermectin.
everybody was saying? Ivermectin. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly the right example. Yeah.
A
Yeah, think
hun-
about ivermectin, right? I mean, even before the COVID pandemic, people were peddling ivermectin as something that could cure cancer, it could cure rheumatoid arthritis, it could cure like your obesity, it could make you happier and healthier than ever before. Oh shit, there's this new COVID thing. Hey, we should get people to start saying that you can cure your COVID with ivermectin, right?
I'll I'll
Exact
say
same thing.
this about people
Hmm.
who did ivermectin: they didn't die of worms.
It
They
didn't die
didn't
of
die of
worms.
worms.
No, no,
So
there was that couple that I think they died, but they died of an overdose of ivermectin by drinking like ivermectin from their aquarium tank. Yeah,
yeah,
early on during the pandemic, and they were told to do it by the president of the United States, right? So like, why wouldn't you, right? I mean, that seems like an authoritative figure if you've ever seen one before,
yeah.
right? So so yeah, and there's so like in the area of pseudoscience, right? Pseudo profound bullshit of the kind that we were talking about earlier, like that new age bullshit generator. That stuff is everywhere, right? Like you hear all kinds of like, the quantum effects will rebalance your chakras or something like
Hmm.
that. And like that's just like off the top of my head, but exactly the kind of thing that a alternative wellness guru might say to somebody. But there's it's
Toxins.
in yeah, yeah, yeah. Toxins.
Toxins was
Everything
a
is
big one.
toxins, right?
Yeah.
Toxins, peptides, right? Oh, you gotta take your
Uh-huh.
peptides, bro. Gotta take your peptides if you want them gains, right?
Uh-huh.
That's a whole topic that like, oh my God, I need to make a video about peptides now. All of a sudden, I don't want to, but like I feel like I need to because they're just everywhere. And it's all the same. It's bullshit. It's bullshit.
Yeah.
It doesn't do anything. The only thing that it can possibly do is like maybe be dangerous, right? But you can spend a shitload of money on getting some peptides out of some unregulated lab coming from China, and then you can go ahead and inject it right into your body. I'm sure that that's not harmful or dangerous at all, right?
Yeah. And the thing that gets
Yeah.
me with people who are into this shit is that it happens every other year. It happens
Yeah.
once a year. Why have you not heard it yet?
There's
Like,
always a new one.
there's always
Yeah.
a new one.
Yeah.
Why have you not
Hmm.
figured this shit out? And
Yep.
also, if the last one, if 4 years ago you got a magical cure all, why do you
Right.
need a new magical cure all? That one should have cured all of it.
That's right.
Why do you
Yeah.
need to keep finding new magical cure-alls? One of
Hmm.
them should be enough, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Gwyneth Paltrow's jade vaginal eggs should have cured everybody of everything at this
A
point,
hundred
right? Why?
percent.
Why didn't it? Yeah. So yeah, and it's also important to point out too that in this sphere, like a lot of these, right, the quacks, the fraudsters, like some of them are true believers. Some of them really believe what they're saying, right? But
Mm-hmm.
guess what? It doesn't matter, right? Like bullshit is not engaging with the truth, right? Like it doesn't even matter. They could believe that what they're saying is true. It's still bullshit because what they care about is that you believe them and you don't believe actual doctors, right? Like that's what they care about. They want to capture you so that you're going to believe them and you're instead of anybody else, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So so that's that. Got anything else to say about that? I feel again kind of like
I
politics. I feel like that's pretty well done.
I will say I could probably make a list of 500 products in my lifetime that were designed to
Hmm.
cure everything. Oh, like copper.
Yeah.
Remember they just put copper
Hmm.
and stuff in
Yeah.
like,
Copper
oh hey,
magnets.
yeah,
Yeah.
copper magnets. It's gonna pull the
Hmm.
metals toward your scrotum, which is gonna make you more I was gonna say,
It's just
uh, I
you're
was
gonna
gonna
be
say
such a manly man.
you're gonna be such a
Yeah.
manly man. I was gonna say
Yeah.
voracious, and I was like, that sounds
Uh,
dangerous. Um,
right.
but yeah, no,
Hmm.
it's horseshit. I'm very weary anytime a new product comes out that people keep
Hmm.
talking up how it's gonna help your health. I think you're
Yeah.
lying to yourselves.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you should be. Yeah, you should be. So in that's an excellent segue into the last section. Okay. This is the last thing, the last real segment that we've got going on here. And is that I want us to build a bullshit detector, right? So one of the best ways that you can steel yourself against bullshit is to be able to detect it and detect it really well. So this is based largely off the work of Carl Bergstrom and Jevin West, who are both professors actually at University of Washington here in my state. But they have a book that they published called "Calling Bullshit: The Art of Skepticism in a Data-Driven World." They published it in 2020. They also have a very good website that has a lot of free material on it called callingbullshit.org, and it's based off of like a really popular undergraduate course that they taught that was all about like identifying bullshit. And they have kind of like a list of 7 different things that you can do whenever you're engaging with any kind of media or with a specific person, that you can kind of like go through this checklist in order to be able to figure out whether or not this is bullshit that you're listening to or not, right? So the first one is ask yourself, does this claim have a specific falsifiable meaning, right? So if
Mm-hmm.
they're saying something, is there a way that you could actually hypothetically prove it wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or are they just saying something that's like completely unprovable, disprovable, right? They're just making a claim. There's no way that you could know whether or not it's actually true whatsoever, right? Oh, like I had a conversation with such and such person, and like you have to rely on being able to like track that person down and figure out what they said, right?
Mm-hmm.
So does the claim that this person is saying have a specific and falsifiable meaning to it? Um, the second thing, ask yourself, is the speaker obligated to perform confidence that they don't have, right? So that's kind of getting at that structural driver of bullshit, right? So are they, by virtue of them talking about this, are they themselves put into a position where they are obligated to be an authority figure on everything and anything, right? Or are they in some kind of capacity being asked to like give advice that they have no actual expertise on, right? Is somebody being called into the news to talk about something that they don't know anything about, but it's just somebody that you're going to put them on there for, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've heard about Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye, the Science Guy, two of maybe the most important, most famous science communicators that are currently living, and I've heard both of them at different points make the case that they get asked to go on the news all the time, and oftentimes they get asked to go on the news for anything that has anything to do with science, even if it's not their area of expertise. And both of them now will like push back on it and be like, well, why don't you? There's like a million scientists out there. Why are you asking me about this thing? I don't know about
Mm-hmm.
neurodegeneration. Why would you bring me on to ask me about? They're actual neurodegeneration researchers. Like bring one of them on and talk to them about that, right? So, and that's a great thing that they're willing to do that, because there are a lot of people who are bullshitters who are like, I don't care, I'll get up and I'll talk about that. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you can put me on the news and I'll say whatever comes out of my mouth. Sure, right?
Yeah.
So, step number 3, right? Check the source's relationship to the truth, right? Remember, a liar actively engages with the truth. But a bullshitter shows just has no regard for the truth whatsoever, right? So see if you can figure out whether or not this person is are they actively lying to you, or are they just kind of like waving off the truth as if it just doesn't even matter, right? Oh, it doesn't even matter whether or not that's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just like make sure that you're like listening to what I have to say because I'm the authority figure here, right? Beware of impressive sounding numbers, right? And numbers is something that is kind of like a new thing. There's been a huge influx of data into our daily lives. People used to not be as awash with data as we are now, and I think a lot of people, for the most part, for the best, are getting exposed to a lot more just hard data. You're hearing about a lot of statistics. You're hearing a lot of numbers thrown about all the time. But the problem with that is that numbers can be difficult to argue with, and people know that when they're trying to convince you of their argument, and they may be using the numbers inappropriately, right? So if you hear numbers that sound wildly impressive, take a step back to ask yourself, like, is that actually true, right? Or like, is that even actually passing a sniff test, or are they just like throwing out numbers that are like inflated just to sound impressive, right? Step number 5, notice whether the claim is designed to produce. Sorry, I've got dogs in my house.
All right, your dog has
Um,
found Russians in the house.
they're coming to get me, Zach. You gotta protect
Yep.
me. Just tell everybody that I worked hard and I tried to do good in the world, please.
I'll tell half. I'll tell him half of
All
that.
right, fair, fair, yeah.
He tried to do
So
hard in the world. Sorry, go ahead.
in the world. Yeah. So notice whether the claim is designed to produce an impression rather than actually communicating information, right? Is this person saying something that's just trying to like inflate their own ego or make themselves sound important, or are they actually trying to like get real information across, right? Um, uh, Step number 6 is calibrate your own confidence in real time. So like beware if you have a bias that might lead you to believe in something. This one is actually kind of a big one, I think, right? So like this is basically you working on your own confirmation bias, right? If you're hearing about something and it feels good to you based on your own biases, then like you should maybe take a step back and just make sure that like am I believing this because it's actually a convincing argument, or am I believing this because I want it to be true, right? And I think that one's actually like a big one
Mm-hmm.
psychologically. And then step number 7, they say slow down before sharing, and that's specifically talking about social media, right? So if you're going through and like you see a bunch of posts online, right? Maybe before you share it and spread misinformation, stop and think about it and like go through these steps first before you just kind of like reflexively, like, I don't know, add it onto your reel or something like that on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm not great with social media, but anyway,
Uh,
the young kids out there, like, just think about it before you repost something, basically, right? Because it can be really easy for like stuff to just kind of like spitball or snowball and just like kind of get out of control in this in the whole sphere of social media if people are just kind of like passively posting something along again, right?
mm-hmm.
So those are kind of like their 7 steps to build your own bullshit detector. And if you can just kind of like go through those steps, you will make yourself a lot better able to detect bullshit as you see it and as you come across it. And the more you do these things, they just kind of become second nature. And eventually you get to a point that you're kind of like, a good, well-informed skeptic, and you can kind of like do these things in the background pretty intuitively, right? Um, but this is bringing me to the point of optimism, right? So we end every episode with a point of optimism, and that is that merely the fact of knowing that bullshit exists makes you more immune to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can, if you don't want to fall prey to bullshit in and of itself, merely knowing the fact that this is a real thing, that this is a real phenomenon, and it's not just in your head that like, oh, there are people out there that are spewing bullshit left and right. Like, no, it's true. I mean, that is a true thing, and just merely knowing that makes you more immune to bullshit. But also, you can be trained to go through this kind of cognitive process to be able to figure out whether something is bullshit, and then you will have an advantage in your life. You will go through your life better capable of being able to figure things out for yourself and whether or not it's bullshit, because we are awash in it. It is all over the place. And the only way that you can really deal with that is to be able to get to the point that you can recognize it so that you can ignore the bullshit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But research shows that if you go through these steps and if you do these things, that you can actually steel yourself against it, and you can be more immune to it, and you can live a more bullshit free life by just knowing that it exists and like going through the process of thinking about things and thinking about things analytically, right?
I
So
and
that's
I
a
will
that's a
say,
great thing.
from a personal standpoint, as a guy who probably is pretty low on the bullshit believing meter. It saves
Uh,
you money. If nothing
yeah,
else, you don't
right.
buy crap. You don't buy a lot of
Yeah,
crap.
yeah, and and I hear something that I hear from a lot of people when I'm talking to just like friends and family of mine sometimes when they're trying to figure out like, hey, like I mean, you have like you are educated in a way that I'm not educated. Like, how do I, as somebody who like, doesn't have a PhD in biology, how do I know if RFK Jr. is saying something? How do I know that that's bullshit or not? And how do I go about that? And like this is a way that you can do that. And you don't have to have a high education in order to be able to do this. In fact, not only that, but the research shows that educational attainment actually doesn't correlate super well with bullshit receptivity. There are very educated people who are very receptive to bullshit. And there are
People.
people who just have a high school education and just kind of like they know bullshit when they see it.
Mm-hmm.
And they, even though they're not, they don't have like high educational attainment, they still have a really good bullshit detector system, and they are low bullshit receptivity, right? And that's a good thing for them, right? So
Well,
like, but it doesn't
people.
actually correlate with educational level, political affiliation, right? People on the left and right are sensitive to bullshit, or general intelligence, right? The most reliable indicator is the ability to think analytically.
People
Yeah.
like magic. The reason
Hmm.
bullshit exists is that people like magic. Bullshit
Yep.
is a version of magic. It is
Yep.
just somebody giving you a fantastical version of reality, and that's fun
Yep.
sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
We
Yep.
all want to believe that like superpowers exist and aliens come to visit regularly. Okay, we all have
Yep.
things we want to believe in. Just
Yeah.
don't let it ruin your
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yep. Yeah. So that's my bullshit spiel.
Thank
That's all the
you.
bullshit that I got for today. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that. That was eye
Yeah, thanks.
opening, and I
Hmm.
will. My last statement is this: you and
Hmm.
I are messengers of the stratosphere. Indigo child, look within and unify yourself. That's what I would say.
That's it. That's yeah, a very profound thought, Zach. Very
Yeah.
profound thought. Yeah. Excellent.
As the thing is,
So
it's just insight requires exploration. Health
great.
is the
Yeah.
birth of Starfire and of us.
That is something. Yeah, that is something. That's
Yep.
wild.
And I have no, and
Uh,
I have nothing more to say about that.
that's fair. I do have a 2026 predictions update.
Ooh, love it. What do we got?
Yeah, yeah. So I made three predictions at the beginning of the year, right? So the first one was that Donald Trump is going to die at some point this year because of dementia. I would like to point out that that is not a political statement. Although it is quite obvious, I think, that I am not a big fan of Donald Trump politically. I need to be clear about this every time that I bring it up here and in my personal life. People are like, "Wow, that is like what a hardcore political statement to say." And no, I am saying that as somebody who has a PhD in neuroscience and that my dissertation has the words frontotemporal dementia in the title, I think Donald Trump has frontotemporal dementia. And people with his symptoms do not last longer than a year. So like that is a statement based in scientific reasoning and not based on whether or not I like his politics. That was the first prediction that I made.
I
Yeah.
think it's a political prediction when you're like Donald Trump this year will die from my assassination bullet.
That would be
That's when it
that would
becomes
be
a
a
political
that would be a
statement.
political statement.
Yeah.
Yeah. My last prediction was that the AI bubble was going to burst, which still hasn't happened yet. But boy howdy is all of the indicators that there's a bubble that's like just ready to pop at any moment. At any
Yeah.
moment. Yeah.
The more I watch it, the more I feel like it's going to be a not satisfying burst.
Yeah.
Like someone's
Yeah.
poking a little like water
Hmm.
balloon with water and we're just watching it slowly go. I was hoping for a
It's gonna
end
leave.
of times
Right.
explosion, but it seems like somebody just popped the balloon and then is walking away
Um,
from it being like I
Yeah,
don't even
that was never a
I've never
thing. I
touched a
wasn't
water balloon in
even
my
doing
life.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're not even doing AI anymore. We're on to quantum computing now. Duh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
AI was for dumb dorks who
Right,
needed
right.
to bump their stock
Yeah,
prices.
that's right. Yeah. So that was my third prediction. My second prediction
Mhm.
was that there was this company that presented at the Consumer Electronics Symposium, the CES show conference, called Donut Labs that said that they had this revolutionary battery that was going to like change everything, and it was not lithium ion. It was a sodium battery instead of lithium, and it was but it had like the same like charging capacity as lithium ion batteries, which is like kind of supposed to be somewhat impossible at this point. Um, they claim that it was like wildly it had this like wildly broad like temperature range that they could use things in, and that it could recharge itself like 100,000 times. It could do like 100,000 battery charging cycles and stuff like that, and that it was also cheap, and it wasn't using any like rare earth elements, so it would be environmentally friendly, and they were like market ready, and they were going to start producing stuff by the second quarter of this year. That's what they said at the beginning of the year, and
Mm-hmm.
I said that's a fraud. So I
Yeah.
said that company's fake. I mean, it's a real company, but like their claims that they're making is fraudulent, and they don't have this battery.
Yep.
And since then, there have been a couple of companies that have tried to test them and have found that in these very narrow tests that they would provide a battery and be like, okay, like don't do any of these things, just test it in this one particular way, test it for the energy capacity. And it's like, okay, but that's not the claim that people care about.
Yeah.
Um, and they submitted it for some very limited testing here and there, and the results of all of those tests are that this is actually just a lithium ion battery.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that you're submitting is just consistent with like it's just a lithium ion battery, and you just lied about what kind of battery it is, and you said that it was a lithium. You said that it was a sodium ion battery instead of a lithium ion battery. But this looks and acts like a lithium ion battery, and they're like, no,
Yeah.
no, 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 totally, totally, trust me, trust me, bro. Um, and uh, since then, the CCO, the chief consumerism guy at Nano Labs, which is the company that was actually doing the manufacturing for Donut Labs, for Nano Nordic batteries. I think it's one of the
Mm-hmm.
subsidiaries of this. The whole thing is like a big conglomeration of a bunch of different a bunch of different businesses. But an executive at this Nordic Nano company uh, resigned from the company and then submitted a criminal whistleblower complaint about how all the claims were lies and false. And that's noteworthy in that that is the part of the company that would actually be manufacturing these batteries that they say that they have. And this guy who was like an executive officer, that's the word that I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
He's a chief commercial officer for Nordic Nano, or used to be before he resigned. He resigned and went to the Finnish government and said, "Hey, this guy's lying, and this is all fake, and it's not real, and we can't actually build this." And there's been a whole host of of investigative journalism that has gone through and like looked at the results of these things, and they were able to find like chemical signatures where you could look at the way that the battery responded in some of the tests, and you can figure out from like the temperature spikes
Mm-hmm.
and like the amount that the battery expanded while you're charging it and whatnot. You can actually get a chemical signature off of it, and they were able to show that like, yeah, that's a lithium ion battery.
Yeah.
A lithium ion battery acts that way, and a sodium ion battery doesn't.
I
So,
So two things. One, I like how they went to the people for testing and they
uh-huh.
were like, "Hey, this is like under like Mormon scripture rules, so you have to look through this big hat
Right.
and then just
Uh-huh.
transcribe what you see from the
Yeah.
giant hat."
No.
Um
Yeah.
and then also, I don't understand with scams like this,
Uh-huh.
what is the end game plan?
Hmm.
Because it
Yeah.
feels like there's certain lies you can absolutely get away with.
Yeah.
I think maybe Elon Musk has set a bad precedent because he just
Yeah.
makes shit up pretty regularly and nobody ever
Hmm.
calls him on it. Like no
Hmm.
substantive action is done by it. But this is just
Yeah.
such an obvious fraud. It's like when
Yeah.
that Nikola company pushed a truck to
Yep.
the top of a hill and let it roll down. It's like,
Exactly.
well, we're gonna
Exactly the same.
figure out that you can't do this. So like,
Yeah.
what do you
Yeah.
do after someone gives you
Hmm.
$75 million and you can't make the product?
Right.
You
Yeah.
are like, are you getting enough party time with that money to
How
make
do you,
it
yeah.
worth the prison
Yeah.
time?
How do they do that? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have an answer for you now.
No.
Yeah. So, and this is kind of like the final nail in the coffin, is that yeah. So they were only submitting it for testing in ways that were not really actually going to answer the right questions that people wanted to answer, and they kept on saying like, oh, it's all like proprietary and whatnot, and that was how they were like kind of getting around saying like showing that that like actual evidence that they had a battery and that it worked the way that they said it did, and that they could actually manufacture it at scale and produce it, right? So they just kept on not showing any evidence, and they just kept on saying like, trust me, bro, right? It's all
Mm-hmm.
bullshit, right? It's very
Yeah.
relevant to today's topic. But what they were doing also during the meantime of that is that they were busy collecting fundraising to the tune of at least $25 million,
Mm-hmm.
all from small non-institutional investors.
Okay.
Because a large institutional investor that would come in with like, tens of millions of dollars for one investment or billions of dollars for one investment would be like, show me the proof, right? Show me
Yeah.
your books, show me the labs, show me where you can do this, show me the evidence that this stuff works. But smaller investors don't have that kind of access. If you were to
Yeah.
go to this company and say, hey, I would like to invest, like $3,000 into your business, can I do that? They would be like, oh yeah, sure thing, sure thing. And then you'd be like, oh well, can you show me some evidence that it actually works? And they'd be like, no,
Yeah.
no, no, we only do that for large investors, right? We only do
Yeah.
that for people that invest, $50 million or more into it, right? So they actually ended up they basically ended up swindling $25 million out of like 13,000 small investors,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there
So
you go. That's what it is. Yeah.
I will say that hearing this, there's a non-zero chance my dad invested in Donut Labs batteries.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 He might be one of them. Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is 100% the type of shit I'm gonna get a text about being like, honey, they made a battery and it can go for 4 years without a
Hmm.
charge,
Yep.
and it's $1 a piece. That's all.
Yep.
Everyone can get a battery
Hmm.
for $1.
Yep, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Yeah. So my understanding now is that there's actual like corporate fraud charges and actual like criminal fraud charges being brought together in Finland now for the CEO of this company, who sounds like he basically like unilaterally did this himself. Like it sounds like there's plenty of other people in the company that were just like, Hold on," and he was like, "No, I'm gonna do this." Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
like that I'm sure there was. I mean, it involves so many people at so many different institutions that the fact that there was only one whistleblower that has come forward so far is like, you know that it involved more than just him, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah, but it definitely sounds like it was spearheaded by like this one guy who's just the owner of the company and not
Yeah.
a battery expert.
Yeah. Why would he
He's
be
just like,
really?
he's just some dude that like owns a company that built motorcycles until he bought a battery company, and now he's just like, hey, let's go take this to a bunch of like small investors, not the big ones, because they would ask
Yeah.
too many questions, right?
Big investors always have questions like, how does it
Yeah.
work, and can I
Hmm.
see it work correctly?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah, which I think it's also noteworthy that basically the exact same thing happened with the SpaceX IPO recently. That they part of their apparently they had like an unusually small number of stocks available for institutional investors in the
yep,
SpaceX IPO. Like basically all of the stock that went available was made essentially only available to like small like retail investors like
yep,
me, right?
of
I didn't buy
course,
I didn't buy SpaceX. I didn't buy SpaceX stock because as soon as I saw it, I was just like, well, this is a fraud,
yeah,
right? Like, but yeah, it's the exact same. It's the exact same thing. It's the exact same ethos, the exact same method, right? It's just like, oh well, like don't take it to all the institutional investors because they're going to want to see a lot of evidence and proof. And like what we want is we want the stock price to go way way up so that we can sell out in 6 months. Yeah,
yeah, 100%.
yeah, hmm yeah,
Anyways,
yeah. So again, the stock market is fake.
yeah, almost like we shouldn't use it. It's not a good measure of how
Yeah,
anything is doing, other than how many uh,
right,
uh, Patrick Bateman style psychopaths are like successful in this moment.
right. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining me, man.
Thanks
I'm
for
I'm glad
having
we.
me, and this was a blast
Yeah.
as always. And I'll see you
Yep.
soon.
All right. See
All
ya.
right,
Bye.
bye.
Zach, let me tell you a story.